It started with a sound that no one expected to hear. Barack Obama stood before a packed hall, and instead of another speech filled with polished lines, he pressed a button and let an audio recording play. At first it was faint, just a recognizable voice echoing through the speakers. Then the words became clear. It was Donald Trump, unfiltered, caught in a private conversation that was never meant to reach the public. The audience froze. Phones shot up instantly, recording, streaming, broadcasting the moment to millions beyond the walls of that room. Obama didn't need to explain. The tape spoke for itself, carrying a weight heavier than any accusation. Within seconds, hashtags erupted across social media, and newsrooms scrambled to interrupt regular programming. What people were hearing was more than gossip, more than political theater. It was the raw, undeniable sound of Trump speaking words that cut through his own defenses. The timing, the setting, the choice of Obama as the one to reveal it, it all collided into a perfect storm. And as the last seconds of the recording echoed into silence, America felt the ground shift beneath its feet. The setting was not accidental. Barack Obama had chosen one of the most anticipated political forums of the year, a gathering broadcast live to millions across the nation. In the front rows sat journalists from every major network, analysts, and international correspondents, all ready to dissect his every word. Among the crowd were senators, governors, activists, and students representing a cross-section of American society. It was the perfect stage for a revelation. Donald Trump, watching from a remote studio where he had been preparing for a televised appearance, immediately became part of the drama. The moment the recording began, his team scrambled, phones buzzing, aides whispering frantic questions, trying to figure out where the tape had come from and how Obama had obtained it. The recording itself was impossible to dismiss. It wasn't a vague allegation or a secondhand claim. It was Trump's unmistakable voice, played clearly for the world to hear. The tension in the hall was electric. Some in the audience leaned forward in disbelief, others whispered, while a few clutched their phones so tightly that their hands trembled. Obama allowed the tape to run without interruption, his expression calm, his silence deliberate. He knew the weight of the moment. His allies sat stone-faced, letting the gravity of the evidence settle in. For them, this was more than a political strike. It was history unfolding. Trump's immediate response was broadcast almost simultaneously. On his favored networks, he appeared within minutes, his tone defensive and scattered. He called it a hoax, a fabrication, a desperate attack from the establishment. But even as he spoke, his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. He demanded investigations, threatened lawsuits, and tried to project strength. Yet the damage was already done. The contrast was stark. Obama, calm and steady, letting the facts breathe. Trump, frantic, fighting the shadows of his own words. As the recording continued, the content grew darker. Trump's voice, unmistakable in tone and cadence, laid out details that were impossible to spin away. He spoke of secret deals made behind closed doors, conversations with foreign interests that contradicted his public positions, and comments dripping with disdain for the very voters who had once chanted his name at rallies. The words were raw, unpolished, and damning. Obama paused the tape at key moments, adding only a few sentences of context. Each time, his interjections were sharp, precise, and devastating. "This is not about politics," he said at one point, his voice steady. "This is about truth, accountability, and the integrity of leadership." The crowd responded with gasps, murmurs, and then applause that swelled like a wave. Trump, meanwhile, was unraveling in real time. On live television, he shouted over reporters, insisting that the audio was manipulated, that Obama was orchestrating a witch hunt. But fact-checkers moved quickly. Within an hour, multiple outlets confirmed the authenticity of the recording. Audio experts validated it, noting the absence of splicing or digital tampering. The evidence was not just strong, it was airtight. Commentators seized on every line, every phrase. One segment of the tape revealed Trump bragging about cutting a secret arrangement that favored his business empire over national interests. Another captured him belittling loyal allies, mocking them as useful idiots in his pursuit of personal gain. These revelations weren't just embarrassing, they struck at the core of his image as a leader who claimed to put America first. Across social media, the reactions poured in. Supporters scrambled to defend him, but many struggled with the clarity of the evidence. Memes, hashtags, and live stream debates flooded the platforms. Trump's critics declared victory, calling it the beginning of the end. Even some of his allies began to fall silent, reluctant to attach themselves to the growing firestorm. Obama's presence elevated the entire moment. He didn't need to shout. His calm delivery and the damning content of the tape did all the work. And as Trump grew louder and more erratic, the contrast became impossible to ignore. One man controlled the narrative with measured restraint, while the other drowned in his own words. The nation could sense it. The balance of power in the conversation was shifting dramatically, and Trump was losing control. The climax came with a line that landed like a hammer blow. As the recording played, Trump's voice grew louder, more reckless, and then came the words that no one could mistake or excuse. "If it means protecting myself, I don't care what happens to the country. They'll follow me anyway." The hall erupted in shock. Gasps, shouts, and a stunned silence that followed felt heavier than anything before. It wasn't just arrogance or crude insults this time. It was a declaration that exposed the heart of his self-interest. It sounded like betrayal, a statement that placed personal survival above national duty. Obama let the words hang in the air. He didn't need to elaborate. The tape spoke louder than any commentary could. The crowd, already tense, now broke into chaos. Some people stood in disbelief, others shouted in outrage, and cameras zoomed in on faces filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. On television screens across the country, anchors struggled to keep their composure as they replayed the line again and again. Analysts called it the most damning political revelation of the decade. Former allies of Trump began issuing cautious statements, distancing themselves, urging patience but carefully avoiding direct defense. For many of them, it was the moment they realized the shield of loyalty had cracked. Trump himself appeared minutes later on live broadcasts, visibly shaken, his words tripping over each other as he tried to downplay what had just been heard. He claimed the comments were taken out of context, that it was a joke, that Obama was manipulating the public. But the excuses only deepened the damage. The panic in his tone, the sweat on his brow, the speed of his denials. All of it betrayed the image of strength he had so carefully crafted. The reaction outside the political world was even more explosive. Protesters gathered in cities overnight, some demanding accountability, others chanting in disbelief at what they saw as open contempt for the nation. Hashtags like #TrumpTape and #CountryBetrayed surged to the top of every platform. The nation wasn't just reacting, it was convulsing. And in that moment, as the uproar grew louder and the tape replayed across the globe, it became clear. The line Trump had spoken would be remembered for years. A single phrase, captured on a recording, had turned political theater into a seismic national event. When the noise finally settled, Barack Obama stepped forward to close the moment. His words were calm, deliberate, and heavy with meaning. "The truth," he said, "always finds a way to be heard. No matter how loud the distractions, no matter how powerful the person who tries to hide it, the truth cuts through." The hall erupted in applause, but it was not the usual applause of a political rally. It was something deeper, more visceral, a collective release of shock and recognition. The people present knew they had witnessed history being rewritten in real time. Across the nation, the fallout was immediate. News outlets ran wall-to-wall coverage, dissecting every second of the audio, every frame of Obama's reveal, and every frantic reaction from Trump. Late-night shows turned it into biting monologues, while serious analysts debated the long-term implications. Was this the beginning of a political collapse? Could Trump survive such a direct blow to his credibility? For Trump's base, the revelation was a test of loyalty. Some clung tighter than ever, convinced the tape was another weapon from the so-called establishment, but others, faced with the undeniable words of their leader, began to hesitate. For the first time in years, cracks began to show in what had seemed like an unbreakable wall of support. The international response added to the storm. Foreign leaders weighed in, some expressing alarm, others barely hiding their satisfaction at seeing America's divisions laid bare. The recording wasn't just a domestic scandal, it was a global spectacle. In living rooms, workplaces, and public squares, Americans argued, cried, and debated late into the night, Families split over the meaning of the words, friendships strained under the weight of opposing interpretations. The audio had become more than a revelation. It was a mirror, reflecting the fractures within the nation itself. And yet Obama's final message lingered above all the noise. It was not about partisanship, not about victory or revenge. It was about a principle. That truth, no matter how deeply buried, will eventually break the surface. That one line, repeated again and again on news broadcasts and social media clips, became the anthem of the night. By dawn, the country was changed. Trump's panic had been broadcast to the world, his words etched into the collective memory of a nation already on edge. Obama's calm, steady revelation had turned into a defining moment. And as the sun rose, Americans knew they had crossed into a new chapter of history, one where the echoes of that recording would never be forgotten.